I think we probably have a good group to go ahead and get started. Jessica, are you okay with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, welcome everyone to another session with PracticePanther and Smith AI. This is actually, this combination was definitely one of our most well-attended and I think requested webinars from late last year. And so we're happy to be doing another one with some of our favorite partners over at Smith AI. Well, we'll get into introductions here in a bit, but of course, we're doing a follow-up session on PracticePanther's Law Firm Growth Matrix and really looking at the dimension here of scalability, specifically as it pertains to how firms think about unlocking their staff capacity for greater efficiency and scalability here in 2023. So we're excited about this session. Q&A is open, right? And so as you guys have questions throughout the webinar, we'll try to keep this one pretty quick, but as you guys have questions, drop them in the Q&A and we'll reserve time at the end to actually speak to some of those. But we have a great slate of content here today, and so we're looking forward to jumping in with you guys. Awesome. So Libby, who's a member of the PracticePanther team, was supposed to be co-presenting today with Jessica, but actually her building went through a bit of an evacuation or a drill, and so I actually end up getting to step in and trying to fill Libby's shoes, but nonetheless, we have you guys covered on content. I'm the VP of Marketing for PracticePanther. My name is Maiwa Oyubadija. And Jessica, do you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. My name is Jessica Paxton. I work at Smith AI as Product Marketing Manager. So that means I do everything from manage our integrations, like our integration with PracticePanther. I also help release new products. So whenever we have a new feature or release a new product, I get that out to the marketplace and make sure everybody knows how awesome it is.
Awesome. And Jessica has been a great partner of ours here at PracticePanther, her and Maddie for quite some time. So again, excited for today's conversation.
Absolutely.
Yes, for any of you all who are not super familiar with PracticePanther, we're the leader, I'd say, in all-in-one legal practice management software. Through PracticePanther, law firms can do everything from seamlessly manage their cases, whether it's contacts, matters, documents, invoicing, automate, workflow, so you actually can schedule ahead and get going on some of those repetitive tasks related to your cases. It also includes native e-signature capabilities and two-way texting, so you don't have to pay for separate third-party subscriptions. You can actually do all this natively within the platform, as well as billing, payment processing, and a host of other native features. So if you guys aren't familiar, would love to talk more potentially after this session, feel free to reach out and we'll have a bit of more contact information here at the end.
Yeah, and this is me, Smith AI. So Smith AI is a 24/7 customer engagement solution. We do everything from answer inbound calls, website chats, Facebook messages, SMS messages as well. And we also do outbound calling with one of our newer products called outreach campaigns, excuse me. So we're a little bit more than an answering service. We don't like to use that terminology because we are a true customer engagement solution. We do everything from screening leads that come into your practice. We will qualify those leads and make sure that only those leads that meet certain criteria are actually getting booked onto your appointments. So or onto your consultation calendars. So we'll book those appointments. We'll also do client intake. We can use the client intake forms through PracticePanther as well. We do payment collection. And as it says at the bottom, like I said, we do those inbound calls, outbound calls, and website chat.
And we have a number of our customers here at PracticePanther that leverage Smith AI and integration with PracticePanther, which we'll talk about a bit at the end. But they've just found it to be exponentially increasing the capacity of their staff to take on new clients. And so I think the combination of the two kind of platforms and services are just pretty revolutionary for law firms in their processes. So
Absolutely.
So for today, y'all, we're super excited once again. So for this discussion, if you guys joined us for the last discussion on the law firm growth quiz, you kind of have an idea of the flavor of this one. But again, this one's focusing on the second dimension. And so we'll start with a bit of a discussion on the challenges that the law firms are kind of seeing in this year and then really last year around their staff capacity and how they work to get the most out of it. the dimensions in impacting law firm scalability, and how we think about the opportunity for law firms to make progress on this to scale their firms. We'll talk more about the growth quiz, and then talk through what we kind of feel like is a formula for actually improving your law firm's internal processes to really trend growth into your book of business and bandwidth this year. And then we'll talk a little bit more, of course, at the end about how to get the most out of the Smith AI and PracticePanther integration, as I was just stating. Cool. So we'll jump in here. One of the things that we hear a lot from our customers, and you see it in some of the research and surveys out there in the market, is that firms across the board, as they have transitioned to hybrid models, remote models, different working models, but also just kind of a bit of the talent market and labor market right now, just struggling with productivity of their staff. I think that pertains to internal processes, right, as we've alluded to, but also just the needs of their clients, right? Clients are nothing more than consumers, and we're all consumers in our own right. And when you think about how they look to be served through their products, the services that they're purchasing or engaging with, it looks very different than it did 5 or 10 years ago, right? When you look at the needs that customers and clients have in terms of how they expect to be served, even as it pertains to legal services, it can almost feel very expansive. And when you think about how we actually meet their desires, but also maintain the right level of productivity when it seems like the touch points never end, it's been a bit of a challenge for law firms. And we've been hearing it from customers, and that's why we thought this dimension that we're talking about today was so timely and important for law firms. And if you jump to the next slide. Thank you. And so we talked a little bit in the last webinar, looking at the growth matrix, a little bit about the Thomson Reuters study that really came out at the end of last year and highlighted a lot of interesting points as it pertains to law firm aspirations, their feelings and outlooks on growth, their challenges, where they think that there's opportunity for the firms. And one thing that really popped when you look at that is around internal efficiency, where you see that around 62% in the most recent year actually viewed internal efficiency as a significant or moderate challenge for their firm. And so when we think about law firm growth, oftentimes our customers are like, well, hey, I just want to grow my book of business. I want to market more. I want to make sure my presence in the market is top tier versus my competition. And that is certainly a big part of the playbook for achieving growth at your firm. But what we also know that law firms could oftentimes be hamstringed by their internal capacity, right? And we'll hear a lot from our customers, and I think Jessica has a point on this too, is like, well, I want to hire additional staff, or I want to create more bandwidth, but I don't know if I should do that now or until I have more business. But then on the flip side, it's like, well, I can't get more business because my team is just tapped out on capacity. It's that chicken and the egg moment. But internal efficiencies can be a huge flywheel and unlock on that growth journey. Go ahead, Jessica.
Absolutely. We'll talk about this a little bit later, but you mentioned marketing. A lot of times throwing more money at marketing efforts is not the right answer for scalability, or at least not the right first answer. That's not the first thing you want to look at. The first thing you want to look at is your internal efficiency, 100%. You want to make sure that you have your inbound funnels set up to support those marketing efforts.
I love it. I love it. And on the next slide, this is a great slide here, because the number of questions that we hear from prospects, longstanding customers, new customers related to this topic is a ton. And so behind each one of these 5 questions, there's probably 15 more framed in a different way, but it's what we're constantly hearing in the market, right? We're out of bar association conferences, we're hearing the same. It's the questions around kind of what we just talked about. How do I determine which comes first, hiring more staff or getting more clients, and or investing more in marketing, or optimizing internal processes? It's like I'm not quite sure which one to do, and both of them can seem like a risk in their own right if you're not well positioned in terms of the strategy that you're taking. We also oftentimes hear from our customers like, hey, how do I actually determine whether I'm getting the most of my staff as it pertains to my specific working model, whether we're hybrid, remote, in office, my practice area, where we're based. Like, how do I actually assess whether my staff is producing the output they need in order for my law practice to be actually optimizing towards like best in class processes and outputs. Another one is, how much support or admin staff should I have at my law firm? It's like, hey, we have, X number of attorneys or X number of paralegals. How many, admin should I have? What's the proper ratio? I'm kind of winging it, but are there any guidances that you guys can give me as it pertains to this? Another one is like, how do I determine which processes I should be automating? I've been hearing a lot about this, and I've been doing it this way at our law firm for a while. Or a common one is, well, the previous owners of the law firm, the founding partners, the principals, they operate like this, and now we're trying to think about doing things differently. I'm not quite sure where to start. Could you help me think about this? And then, lastly, is there anything that we should be outsourcing? We don't know if we want to bring in a full-time person, what services it actually would make sense to outsource. Can we trust that? Is it secure? Is it compliant to think about? How do we set that up in a way that allows us to grow, but also still keeps security around our clients really top and center?
Mhm.
Anything that you would add here, Jessica?
One of the most pressing questions that we hear for law firms is about intake specifically. How do I get the most out of my client intake to make sure that I'm not spending time with clients or potential clients who aren't the right fit for me?
That's awesome. And so we'll jump into the next slide here. And so here we're going to actually start to dive into the two dimensions that we, again, at PracticePanther and a lot of our partners feel inform the overall growth trajectories of law firms. We've started to allude to a lot of it. And if you were on the previous webinar, we talked in detail about this. We'll try not to belabor the points here today, specifically on this piece, because we have a lot of great content to cover and get through today. But if you guys haven't seen the previous webinar, I encourage you to check it out. It's on the PracticePanther website. But again, two dimensions. The first one, Jessica was alluding to earlier, market presence. And this has a place in your strategy. If your law firm is looking to grow top line revenue, grow your book of business this year, this has to be a part of the equation, right? These are things like, are you operating a well-optimized website? Or are you engaged in SEO optimization for your actual website to make sure it's popping up and when your target prospects and leads are actually typing things into Google? Thinking about your marketing budget, what is it as a percentage of firm revenue? What should it be? Where is it now? And then also optimizing your return on investment for marketing. I think oftentimes we hear from a lot of our firms that like, hey, we're trying this in marketing. We know we're spending here, and the metric that they look at is solely kind of 0.3. Like, hey, we're allocating some budget. This should be working. But if you don't have a clear idea of what the conversion activities are and the cost per each of your channels, you're likely leaving value on the table, right? The market presence is solely defined as your ability to attract new clients based on your visibility in the market. But this has to be a part of the equation. And if you're not doing any one of these things well, what we oftentimes will see is that you'll experience some stagnation of growth, maybe if not in the short term, certainly in the long term. So again, it has to be a part of the playbook.
Absolutely. And another thing I would add to this is making sure that your Google My Business profile is set up and is up to date, because that Google My Business profile is very, very powerful when someone in your local area makes a Google search. It is separate from the SEO search ranking because it's part of the map on the side of the screen. You guys have seen it where whenever you do a search, you get that little box on the side with the local businesses that pop up. That's your Google My Business profile. So if you haven't set that up, you haven't heard of that, go ahead and search for it online, how to set up a Google My Business profile, and definitely make sure that's on your list here of things to do.
Awesome.
That's all part of that digital first. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I was going to say, and then we'll jump into the next dimension on the following slide.
Mm-hmm.
So scalability. This is what we're covering today, you all. And so this is probably the dimension that we spend a lot of time on. I think Wouldn't say that it's necessarily harder than marketing in a sense, but I think it's a little bit more elusive to grasp all the ways that this could be represented at your firm as you think about your own processes, right? And so this one we think of as your firm's operational capacity to take on new clients as determined by your current systems, resources, and processes. As we mentioned at the top of the conversation here, oftentimes what could inhibit a firm from actually reaching some of its growth goals, even if it's just aspirational goals that you think about personally for your practice, is not always just a lack of available or new business, but it's the bottleneck that limits your internal capacity. If I know anything about the folks that are on this call, and then some of you all I know by name, you could tend to actually be working much longer than you want to. All right. And then I think when we think about the health of a law firm, it isn't just in terms of its growth trajectory or its top line revenue or bottom line efficiency. It's also, what's the quality of life of the practitioners at the firm? Are you working nonstop late into the night on the weekends? Is it the same for your staff? Because oftentimes, if that's the case, what you hear is like, I couldn't possibly take on another client right now. We have to reject this one. And that what will in turn impact with the growth trajectory. So how you think about scalability of your firm, we'll talk more about a key part of that today, but think of it related to, and I think we said this last time, ask yourself the question for each one of the things here on the right. How manual or automated, right? It's almost like a spectrum, and we'll talk about that more on the next slide, are my processes as it pertains to each one of these. So client intake, right? Jessica was just talking about that one. Time tracking. And time tracking is one where see a lot of firms where it still can be decently manual, depending on sometimes the age of the firm, the size of the firm. And folks are like, look, I can do that in my sleep. I always kind of remember a rough estimate, but it could be taking you longer than you anticipate, especially when you need to translate that to billing. Billing and payment processing, how manual is not just a process of getting bills out the door, but also following up your clients for payments, collecting on those, depending on your type of practice. So you see a little bit more of that in family law and so on. Document management, retaining signatures, scheduling clients, whether it's an intake or follow-up meetings. The question you ask as you think about all of these is around, how manual or how automated is my process? And if you tend to be on the left-hand side of the spectrum for most of these or any of these, there's opportunity here that could be slowing down some of your growth trajectory. Okay, so here on this one, what we have is a bit of how we think about the matrix. If you guys are again on the previous session, you've seen this before. We have a great quiz around this that allows you to go through several questions, both on the dimension of market presence, but also the dimension of scalability. And you'll answer things specific to your firm, and then it'll kind of tell you where you may plot on this graph. So upper right, you guys that are super savvy at running your practices and business, when it comes to a graph, you always want to be up and to the right, right? That's the sweet spot. So that's high velocity. That's great market presence, but also high scalability. Below that, you have high market presence, lower scalability, and we call this one a bit of a holding pattern. It's you're investing in the right fuel to kind of get you there, but there may be some maintenance required to your internal processes that will allow you to capture all the opportunity that's available to you based on the great marketing activities that you're doing. Upper left, you have cruising altitude. This translates to high scalability, low market presence. That means you're decently a well-oiled ship. You're ready to take off, right? Now you're ready to elevate. You're ready to capture new business. But you may just not be investing in the full marketing toolkit that you should be to really enable your firm to capture all the great optimization you've done internally. And then bottom left, where you don't want to be is low scalability, low market presence. And so take this quiz. If you guys haven't already, it'll tell you where you may be plotting. It's just directional, but it'll also provide you with a bit of a roadmap for things that your firm could be thinking about on a whole bunch of great resources. And then here, this is like a really key piece around what we were talking about regarding that spectrum. And I think this will probably be the place that I wrap, and I think Libby's back on and it can speak to the next session we'll get to here in a second. But I love this visual. When you think about, what is high efficient, productivity and versus what is more minimal. And again, if you have lack of defined processes, folks just kind of that you're onboarding or new hires are kind of doing things their own way, or even an existing hires kind of just been left to their own devices. I mean, it's a little bit manual, not super repeatable scale. That's lower productivity. If you're relying on, pen and paper, even if that paper is just like, tracking things one off in an Excel sheet. You see that kind of in the middle. That can also be lower on the productivity spectrum. Then you have more, solutions that you may be, leveraging to your law firm, right? So it could be systems to help you specifically with your billing, maybe payment processing, maybe time tracking. But leveraging these digital solutions will definitely get you to a more scalable, repeatable, automated a pathway. But what we view as like highest productivity is having these things all integrated together, right? And so when we talk about the benefits of something like PracticePanther, the native integrations with things and services like Smith AI, that's where you want to be, because it feeds intake directly into your practice management software. Billing is pulling in here, whether it's native or through an integration, and that's what we view as like very high productivity. And when it comes to the point I was mentioning initially regarding clients and their expectations in this market, they're high expectations, right? I think it's because the market expects that their service providers have the tools in order to provide that, and you want to be able to scale enough of that in a way that it's repeatable for your business, scalable, but also allows you to take on more business as needed. Jessica, anything that you would add here? Libby, anything that you would add here?
I would add, I guess, a question to you. If someone on the call is thinking to themselves, oh, my time tracking or my client intake definitely falls on the left-hand side of this scale. Where do I start? What do I do? What advice would you give them to just take that first step forward?
I think you have to think about what does it look like and who's involved, right? And actually, we have a pretty good section that's going to kind of break down how you all think about this. But it's like, who's involved and what does that process look like? Then I think it's leveraging partners, right? Whether it's Jessica and her team, PracticePanther, like, hey, how could this look differently? Folks are doing it. Talk to your bar association, talk to your colleagues at other firms and see how they're leveraging it. But you first want to understand, what does that process look like? Who's involved? Then how can we actually simplify it to automate the most repetitive tasks? That's the piece that you want to solve for. And we'll talk about that here in a second.
Brilliant.
All right, we'll jump into the next one. I'll continue here. Cool. So to Jessica's amazing alley-oop, we'll start to dig into how do you actually start to improve the process at your firm as you're thinking about each one of these things.
Ta-da!
Yes, she knew what she was doing.
Almost like I planned it.
Right. Yeah, it's almost like we developed this content together. So I think what we have here is a few things. So one, identify your action plan. Two, define, once you kind of understand the steps involved, what are the processes that you want things to look like in the future, right? How would it look if these really repetitive tasks were actually automated? Examine the priorities, right? Once you have kind of your list of things that we actually want to move to the right side of that spectrum, where are your priorities? You have to break off achievable and meaty pieces of work, but you can't update your entire system all at once. Even when you're leveraging. Sorry, go ahead, Jessica.
I just said absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. Even when you're leveraging a new system and a new service, you're going to have to onboard your team in kind of steps and allow them to get acclimated, familiar, before you start to allow it to dovetail nicely into other processes that would benefit from your optimization. And then, lastly, build a really valuable team of internal and external partners that allow you to achieve this in ways that would deliver high value to the clients that you all serve, but also to your need as a operator of a practice that's looking to scale and achieve growth. Cool. So here we start to talk about one of the key things that we spend a lot of time with our firms on, which is around defining really clear workflows, right? And so think of workflows, and I'm not sure if everyone here kind of uses the same nomenclature here, but these are repeated tasks related to maybe a case type, a type of matter or contact that you know are going to happen every time you intake or start a new case with a client related to something. Right, it may be triggered based off of the events and milestones and dates and deadlines from like maybe a docketing perspective that your firm actually needs to make sure you're hitting. It could also be based on tasks, right? Where it's like, hey, we know that our firm typically operates based on these internal steps that we take in order to just move things along and get the correct team members pulled in where needed. Or it could be a combination of these things. But you want to think about, all right, as it pertains to any one of these milestones, how do we actually create workflows that will now enable all of our team members and all of our staff members to be on the same page without having to have the same conversations, follow up with the same emails all manually. And so in PracticePanther, we have a great workflow feature, has some great capabilities to it. You can kind of see a screenshot of what that may look like here. Like, what are the task, what are the due dates of when it should happen? It could be based on when the case started, any number of milestones. What are the reminders that need to come up in the software for our internal staff members? Maybe what are the emails? And so you can pull in and assign tasks and reminders to certain staff based on when it should happen. You can also set priority levels, use tags, and so it could be based off maybe geography, who the case owner is, etc. But then it also has conditional workflows, which I think are really, really beneficial for a lot of our customers, where it's like, hey, if this happens, and then send this reminder next, which allows you to, as much as you can envision what the different decision points are, you can create a workflow that automates it for you. And guys, if this seems a little daunting at all, if you haven't leveraged something like this before, don't worry. We have folks on our end, or whatever software that you're using, that can actually help you in the onboarding and creating of these. But it can save a ton of time in managing your staff and checking in on due dates and deliverables. You kind of already automate the reminders until they're completed. You can jump to the next slide. Cool. And of course, I won't spend a ton of time on this one, but we also know that another big piece is just time tracking, realization rates. This is a big thing to manage. A lot of firms, frankly, that we come across are leveraging some digital tool to do this. Sometimes I think where the lack of automation or efficiency sometimes relates to their ability to actually kind of see all the time that's being tracked across cases if they're not all uploaded to the same system at the appropriate time. And so I think being able to do that at scale related to any client, any matter that you're working on based off certain staff member types of matters in a practice area, you want to automate as much of this as possible. And doing this in one system that gives you the transparency to see what this looks like across contacts and matters is really important. And that's something that we've seen a lot of our customers leverage to actually automate a lot of the time that their more upper management spends kind of managing the productivity, the progress of their firm. This is kind of related to billing, but I also think a big part of it is also payment processing. And so for you all that are dealing with more maybe families or individuals, and also I think small businesses as well, going digital and leveraging native payment processing from an e-payment standpoint can also be really efficient. We all know that chasing after the customers is see if they have mailed a check into you, or confirming that they have received a mailed invoice or what have you, could be really, really rough. Or leveraging conversations with them one-off and outside a system to get them set up on a payment plan that you all have documented somewhere or just remember, could all be a very manual process with a lot of friction, frankly, for both you, your staff members, but also your clients. And so here we're thinking about are there automated opportunities to set up payment plans, right? Where when the defined time is coming up, they can automatically send a reminder and another invoice to your clients. It can remind them for payments, whether it's like, hey, I haven't been received in the last 15 days, or hey, it's 10 days till the due date. Automating that as much as possible versus you guys having to send emails or give calls. Allowing them the ability to just log into a portal to pay on their end, and you're instantaneously notified about it. It goes to the appropriate account. Then also potentially, how you report on that at the end of the month. How do you see, aging accounts receivable reports? You get to understand, well, what hasn't come in? Is it a trend for a certain client? Is it a trend for a certain type of matter, for a certain, originating attorney, and so on? So huge opportunities when you think about digital billing and payments opportunities. We of course have, and we have been working with our customers to offer that and exist in PracticePanther for a while. But again, you think about what's limiting your ability to scale. Oftentimes, the invoicing, these more non-billable tasks are usually what eat up so much of that upside time to take on new business. So where you can automate that, it's valuable. Cool. And then the client intake process. We're going to talk a bit more about this here in a second with Jessica. But of course, this is really key. Depending on your type of practice, you're going to be doing this consistently. It could be every week that you're going to be taking on new clients, every day, depending on your size and velocity. This should be as seamless as possible. So for a couple of reasons. Once your staff is able to move on to getting work done and documentation needed and meetings set up and milestones moving. So two, it removes a lot of the initial conversation that can slow down progress and limit the ability to do this in rapid succession. Two, it's going to remove some of the friction from for your actual intake potential clients, right? Like we see, and I think Jessica will talk about this here in a bit. We see so much drop off during the intake process. Like someone fills out a form, and the next thing you know, it's been a couple of days before they're called back, before a consultation is scheduled, and they may be off to someone else in the meantime. So the more that you can automate some of your intake processes, the more efficient you're going to be in the lower friction for your potential clients, and can allow you to grow your business. And so when we talk about like what are the tried and true characteristics of a seamless client intake process, it's quick. It quickly can go into your CRM or your contact management system. It's a bit customized. Folks can feel like, hey, this is very specific to the firm. It feels like this is a well-defined experience that I'm about to engage in. And it can quickly, honestly, move folks from being a prospective to an actual client as quickly as possible. Ideally within as few hours or days as possible. And those are kind of the hallmarks of what we think about when we think about the far right hand of that spectrum as it pertains to automation and intake. Anything you would add here, Jessica?
Absolutely. This is one of my favorite topics to talk about because perfecting your client intake it's more than simply automating it. It's also making sure that your client intake is asking the right questions from the first stage. When you're asking the right questions, you are not only qualifying those leads up front to make sure they're the type of client that you want, they fit your ideal client persona, but you're also setting the tone for your professionalism for, hey, I know exactly what I'm talking about, and this is who I am, and this is exactly what my firm is about. So let's say you build an intake form that you put on your website. It doesn't have to be a big intake form. It doesn't even have to be the final intake form. You can have multiple, as it says here, there's an unlimited number of intake forms. So don't be scared to make multiple intake forms for different uses, okay? Different use cases. So if we build an intake form for the website, for example, and I'll show you the funnel later, the inbound funnel, but rather than saying an open-ended question of what can I help you with, ask a more targeted question, again, to show your expertise, to show, yes, this is exactly the right place that you want to be. You're looking for an estate attorney. This is exactly the right place. By asking open-ended questions, you're not necessarily disqualifying. It's going to add more manual work. You're going to have to filter through all that text. Whereas whenever you start adding in, fields that you can build automations or workflows from, such as what state are you in? What county are you in? When is your court date? Different things like that. Then you can start building out those workflows, and it gets a little more precise without feeling overwhelming to the lead. I know there's a lot of advice on the internet that says make your form online as empty and generic as possible. Don't follow that advice. It is bad advice, because I'm telling you right now, it is bad advice. Yes, you will get more leads. That is a fact. You will get more garbage, period. Those leads are not useful. They're a waste of your time. They will slow you down. You do not want them. You want quality leads that match your ideal client persona. You don't want the garbage leads. They're going to book an appointment and then not show up, and that aren't going to give you any billable time. You don't want those leads. So don't follow that advice. And as you're building your intake form for your website, make sure that it's specific to the type of client that you're looking for. So I'll get off my soapbox there and save it for a little bit later, because I've got some more to talk about later when we get to
that is amazing.
The funnel.
That is amazing advice, right? I think
Mm-hmm.
it qualifies who you're looking for, who you're
Exactly.
trying to effectively serve, right? Who you're willing to serve. And again, if bandwidth is potentially an issue, you all want to spend time on focusing on folks that maybe your firm knows are the highest value for your firm. Your firm knows they deliver the most value to, and you don't want to spend time in a consultation, if you don't have to, trying to qualify whether you're going to take on, right, all these different things. And then the other piece there, the benefit is it allows, as Jessica said, for you to immediately, if you're using a conditional workflow, just start the process, get things up and running right away, versus all the confirming of, hey, what's needed here, who's going to be a part of it, stuff that could effectively slow you down in the beginning, create maybe a non-ideal interaction for your prospective client, or just lose them altogether.
All right. So I know you mentioned earlier the bottleneck. So that's why I was giggling earlier, because I knew this slide was coming and you hadn't seen it yet. So the bottleneck is one of the things that will slow down your growth and your scalability. If your business is getting this traffic jam of current clients and qualified leads and unqualified leads and spam callers, and you can take this exact same bottleneck and look at it from your intake point of view, right? If you're not qualifying them and you've just got all this stuff coming in, you've got spammers, you've got some people that are qualified, some that are not, some little kids that are just pranking your website, then you're going to have this traffic jam in the middle, and you're not going to be able to get to those qualified leads quickly because you're spending time on the unqualified leads and the spams and so on. So this goes for your calls, your chats, your intake form. You can use this however you'd like. But in this particular case, we are talking about calls and chats, because that's what Smith AI specifically does. We field inbound calls and chats for businesses, law firms, and then we will qualify those callers. So we can actually use the intake forms from your PracticePanther system, and then they just have a public link. We can build it into our call funnel, and then we will qualify those callers based on specific questions. We don't ask the callers, those wide open questions of what are you calling for? We don't ask those types of questions. We ask very targeted, very specific questions about your business to make sure that they are qualified leads. If they're not qualified, we can refer them somewhere else where they might be qualified. But if they are qualified, then we can go ahead and book the appointments, book the consultation, so that your calendar is only getting filled with people that will show up to the appointment and are a good fit for your firm. So whenever you're thinking about scaling and growing your firm, you have to think about, where do you have these particular bottlenecks? So as I mentioned earlier, when you're looking at advertising, you're looking at spending more marketing dollars. Do you have this type of bottleneck inside your organization? If you're seeing a bottleneck that you're getting in a ton of leads, and because you're getting in a ton of leads, your qualified leads aren't getting responded to quickly, then you want to think about changing your inbound funnel before you start spending more marketing dollars. So let's take a look at that funnel here. This is a little bit more about how Smith AI benefits law firms. So your funnel, we've got these unqualified leads at the top that come to your website. Anybody can find your website. So whenever they complete a form or they do a web chat or they call in, we want to make sure that they're qualified before we do, more with them, before we book that appointment for the consultation, because we want to make sure they show and we want to make sure they're going to be a good fit. Booking a consultation is great. Yeah, you might make a few bucks, but we want to have long-term clients. We're not in the business for doing consultations 8 hours a day. No, that's not what we're here for. We're here to build long-term clients. So we want to find businesses that are going to be a good fit, okay? So this is really where Smith AI comes in and what we can do. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, I do this myself, consider, is that something you could outsource and then you could spend that time billing instead? So we see a lot of small firms that are outsourcing this to us and they're not getting distracted. Their phone is not ringing while they're in the middle of a task. Every distraction, sets you back. You've got to start over your task. They're also seeing much, much better work-life balance. So we're really big into that work-life balance. And rather than answering calls at 8 p.m. at night, or depending on what type of law you practice, 3 a.m., if you're getting those types of calls, we will field those calls. We will do the client intake at 3 a.m. and book the consultation on your calendar and, take care of those potential clients for you. So we do a lot more than just the inbound funnel. It's also that work-life balance and billing more time as well. Do you have anything to add?
No, I mean, I couldn't agree more. Again, even in the past month or so, I've talked to a number of customers who are leveraging Smith AI to kind of help with a lot of this process for their firm. Again, it's all about where your resources can be spent the most effective and productive manner.
Right.
And so I think a partner like Smith AI that helps with this state of the funnel has actually, for our firm, allowed them to just use their staff internally for a bit more focus on various elements of the client in the matter, right? And so I love it.
Absolutely. And since, we're talking about scalability, and not only is part of scalability outsourcing and billing more time, but it's also adding in automations. With that comes the Smith AI and PracticePanther integration. So what we'll do is, whenever you are using both of our solutions, you can integrate us. And that means whenever Smith AI takes a call on your behalf, Smith AI virtual receptionist, like I said, will do all those fancy things. We'll take the call, we'll do all that. After the call is done, then via API, it will search your PracticePanther account. And if the contact does not exist, let's say it's a new lead, then it will add the contact in. You can see here it's added the contact. It'll have all of the contact's information, name, phone number, email, whatever we've captured. Then it'll add the call in the activity tab. And I actually have a bigger screenshot of what's inside that call. So if you were to open it up, it would show you that it's linked to this particular contact. And then it would show you the call time. So you've got the duration here of the time, the amount of time that we spent on the call, and that has the full call details. So everything that happened on the call plus a link to that call recording. So there's no manual copying and pasting over from one system into another system. So here's another view where you can see it on your home page. You can see under the recent activity, here are all the new calls that Smith AI took on behalf of this particular client here. And last but not least, I mentioned earlier that we can use the PracticePanther intake form. So that's very, very simple. Those intake forms have public links, which means you can share them via email, you can put them on your website. Well, that also means you can share them with Smith AI. And what we'll do is we will use those links and put them inside of our call flow instructions for the virtual receptionists. We can use more than one. So say caller meets criteria A, use intake form A. Caller meets criteria B, use intake form B. So we're very flexible in that regard. But those intake forms, don't think of them as like just you only have to use them here inside the portal. You can use them anywhere. You can set up a workflow and send them out. You can use them with Smith AI. So there's a lot of flexibility there. And then last but not least, I know we wanted to talk some about the benefits of integrating and automating different processes. So we've talked a lot about scalability, and scalability has a lot of, improving your ROI and all of that. But when you're automating and when you're integrating, you're saving money, mostly by saving time, because time is money. But you're saving time by not having to do those manual processes. So perfect example earlier was mentioned the process of moving billable time from one system to another system, moving a Smith AI call summary from our system into PracticePanther. Nope, we don't do that. So you improve your customer experience as well. Whenever you're building out these workflows and you're building out these automations, the customer experience is so much better when you say you're going to do something and then they immediately get it. So you book the appointment, they immediately get that reminder. That's a great customer experience. The day before, they get a reminder. You say you're going to send the intake, guess what? It's automated. You will never forget because it is automated. So great customer experience. So we've got a ton of stuff here. Working with the experts, that's us. That's us too, PracticePanther and Smith AI. All right, and right on time.
Awesome. Thank you, Jessica. Like super informative, amazing visuals, amazing slides. So thank you there. You all, we're nearly at time. 8 minutes left. We'll speak to just maybe a couple of questions that we've seen, and so we'll cover those and then try to wrap up just a little bit before top of the hour. I'll start with one here. I think we can call this one for you, Jessica. What would you say the onboarding process looks like to ensure that Smith AI understands kind of the firm's specific needs as it pertains to new client intake?
That is a great question. So our intake process is very white glove service. We have a dedicated onboarding manager for each client who will work through the call flow for that particular business. We do have some best practices, especially if it's someone who is struggling with those internal processes and they need someone to help with setting up that, hey, I've never done an inbound lead funnel. I don't even know where to start. My website has that big blurb that just says, tell me what you want. Like, if that is you and you just need somewhere to start and you don't even know where to begin, we can help you with a starting point. Or if you're coming in and you say, I have a process and it's working great, I just want to outsource, we can do both. But you do have a dedicated onboarding manager who would set everything up and walk you through the entire process. So typically that takes a few days, and then we would do some QA testing on your call instructions. Then we would give you the green light and you start forwarding calls.
Awesome.
Very simple.
Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you.
I have another one here that I think maybe could be for both of us. I can cover some stuff there first, and maybe if there's any that you would add. Do you have a suggestion on the end of month reports that your customers run? And I assume this pertains to efficiency and scalability. I think as I think about the overall kind of marketing playbook as well as scalability, so the two parts of that growth, I would say a couple. I think a lot of our firms will run maybe kind of ROI reports as it pertains to the marketing end. And while we are a little bit light on the specific marketing reports, being that we aren't like a marketing tool, what we do have are custom tags. So custom tags will allow you to be able to maybe assign any clients or matters related to a specific marketing channel, right? And then run reports on, bill time, revenue as it pertains back to a specific marketing channel that you're using. You can also run that by different attorneys, geographies, and so on. So that's one that we see a lot of folks look at from an ROI perspective. Another one is, of course, on some of the billing and operational sides, like an aging report for accounts receivable. As I mentioned earlier, that's a big one, to be able to understand, what's past due, what's the various age, originating attorney reports, activity reports for various members of your staff. Those are some of the common ones that we see as well. Any that you would recommend for your customers, Jessica?
We are seeing reports based on marketing funnels. Yes, mostly based on, and this may be because I'm siloed into this particular area of information, but I'm hearing a lot about tracking numbers and calls that come in via various tracking numbers, which then relate back to specific marketing efforts.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. I have one here that says, once we take the quiz, what do next steps look like? How do we know what the next steps are? As I mentioned, our growth quiz actually, once you complete it, what it'll produce for you is a bit of a plan of what your profile means, what are some of the next steps and some resources. But I think where we have seen a lot of value since we've launched it is folks actually talking to members of our team. They do a really good job at kind of diagnosing your results and processing those to say, hey, so it looks like you're doing really well on X, Y, and Z, but here could be an opportunity for you to think about reimagining what this looks like for your firm, kind of guiding you through how you can leverage your current tools or PracticePanther for your current customer, or Smith AI to actually get the most out of those tools.
Right. And if you haven't taken the quiz, the Law Firm Growth Quiz, I put the link in the chat just now for everyone.
Awesome. One more question here that I guess we can close off on. It's more of a simple question. It's like specifically about payments, right? So we talked a little bit about PracticePanther's payment processing. It's like what are the fees associated with that if our firm wants to start using it? And so y'all, for PracticePanther, it's pretty straightforward. I think a lot of times when you get into payment processors, the fees can be a bit obfuscated. Ours are 2.9% on all credit card transactions, and then 1% on e-check. There may be some kind of network fees depending on your card brand, but we don't charge any membership fees, processing minimums, penalties, all that stuff. No fees apply there. And so it's predominantly going to be the 2.9% on the credit card and 1% with potentially a few other smaller fees, but pretty straightforward. Those are the questions that we have. I think that probably pertains to the larger group. You all, thank you for joining. I think attendance kind of just continued to increase throughout this. So thank you guys. Hopefully it was an informative session. we'll of course send it out again if there's other members of her staff that you want to send it out to. Huge thank you to Jessica and her entire team at Smith AI. I think, again, always great collaborators to work with, great partners of ours. Again, one of the most requested topics coming out of last year was just kind of our integration and how we leverage it for a more seamless intake. Hopefully this was informative, and we will talk to you guys next time.
Thank you for having me.
All right, bye y'all.
Bye.